Chapter 1. The Red Paint. David Jarvis had always been methodical. At 34, he'd built his reputation as a structural integrity consultant through precision, attention to detail, and an almost obsessive need to understand how things worked, and more importantly, how they could fail. His home office reflected this. Organized files, labeled drawers, a color-coded calendar on the wall tracking projects across 3 states. That Tuesday morning started like any other. He woke at 5:47 a.m., exactly 13 minutes before his alarm, kissed his sleeping wife Lori on the forehead, and headed downstairs. Their cat, Gatsby, a gray tabby with a perpetually judgmental expression, weaved between his legs as he made coffee. "Not now, buddy," David muttered, stepping carefully around the animal. "I've got the Meridian presentation at 10. The Meridian Tower project had consumed the last 8 months of his life. 42 stories of glass and steel in downtown Boston, representing the crown jewel of Calhoun Development Corporation's portfolio. David had been hired independently to verify the structural modifications Malcolm Calhoun's team had made to reduce costs. What he'd found in the documents kept him up at night. Corners cut, inferior materials substituted, load-bearing calculations that didn't add up. He'd documented everything, prepared his report, scheduled this morning's meeting with the building commission. Malcolm Calhoun wouldn't be pleased, but David had learned long ago that the truth mattered more than pleasing clients. Buildings didn't collapse because engineers worried about hurting feelings. At 7:15 a.m., David grabbed his briefcase and headed to the garage. That's when he saw it. Red paint, bright crimson acrylic meant for Lori's weekend art project, spilled across the garage floor in a spreading pool. The can lay on its side, knocked from the shelf. Gatsby sat nearby, licking his paw with studied innocence. "Jesus Christ," David breathed, staring at the mess. The paint had pooled directly in front of his car, blocking the garage door. Worse, it had splattered across his front tire and the concrete in a pattern that would track through the entire house if he tried to drive through it. He pulled out his phone, checked the time. 7:18 a.m. The meeting was at 10, downtown Boston, 40-minute drive minimum. He'd planned to arrive early, review his notes, prepare for the confrontation he knew was coming. David looked at the paint, looked at Gatsby, looked at his pristine BMW that he'd detailed just last weekend. He could try to clean it quickly, risk tracking it everywhere, showing up covered in paint. Or he could stay home, clean it properly, join the meeting via video conference. "Damn it," he muttered, setting down his briefcase. His phone rang. Malcolm Calhoun's number lit up the screen. "David," Malcolm's voice boomed with false heartiness. "Just confirming we're all set for this morning. 10 sharp, Commissioner Brennan will be there, some folks from the mayor's office." "Big day." "About that," David started. "Now, I hope you've had time to reconsider some of those preliminary findings you mentioned. You know how these government types are. They see one little discrepancy, and suddenly we're drowning in red tape for months. Costs everyone money, delays jobs. I'm sure with your expertise, we can find a way to present the data that shows the Meridian solid as a rock." David's jaw tightened. Malcolm hadn't just read between the lines of his initial summary. He'd understood perfectly that David had found serious problems. This call was a last-ditch attempt to compromise him. "The building has structural deficiencies that need addressing," David said flatly. "That's not preliminary. That's fact." A pause. When Malcolm spoke again, the friendliness had evaporated. "David, I've built 23 buildings in this city. 23. Never had a problem. You're a consultant I hired as a courtesy, not someone who dictates how I run my projects. I'm asking you nicely, don't make this difficult." "I'll see you at 10, David said, ending the call. He stared at the red paint spreading across his garage floor, an inexplicable chill running down his spine. Later, he would remember this moment, the choice between convenient and right, between easy and safe. He chose to stay home and clean the paint. At 7:43 a.m., covered in old clothes and armed with paint thinner, David texted his assistant, running late. "Cat knocked over paint, blocking garage. We'll join meeting remotely by 10. At 8:15 a.m., Lori came downstairs in her work clothes, heels clicking on the hardwood. "Still cleaning?" "David, just leave it. You can't miss this meeting." "I'll make it," he assured her. "Video conference." "It's fine." She worked in the Meridian Tower too, in the leasing office on the 14th floor. They'd laughed about it when she got the job 6 months ago, both of them connected to Malcolm Calhoun's biggest project, though in very different ways. "I don't trust Malcolm," she said quietly, watching him scrub. "The way he's been calling you, texting at weird hours. He's worried." "He should be," David replied. "The building's not safe, Lori. I'm not signing off on it." She kissed the top of his head. "That's why I married you, Mr. Integrity." She glanced at her watch. "I've got to run. Meeting with the leasing team at 9. Love you. Love you too." The door closed. David kept scrubbing, methodical as always, removing every trace of red from the concrete. At 9:07 a.m., his phone rang. Lori's name on the screen. "Hey, did you forget?" he started. Her scream cut through the speaker, raw and primal. Not words, just terror. "Lori." David's heart slammed against his ribs. "Lori, what's wrong?" "The building." Her voice broke into sobs. "Oh God. Oh God, David, the building." "What building?" "Lori, talk to me." "Meridian." It just..." She couldn't finish, crying so hard she could barely breathe. David was already running to the TV, snatching the remote. Every news channel showed the same image, a massive dust cloud rising over downtown Boston. Debris raining down. People screaming, running. Emergency sirens wailing. The cheer in red, breaking, Meridian Tower collapse. Multiple casualties feared. The world tilted. David grabbed the counter to steady himself. "When?" he whispered. "Lori, when did it fall?" 9, she sobbed. 9:07. I was walking from the parking garage and I heard this sound. This horrible cracking sound. And then it just, everyone, David. Everyone who was inside. The meeting. 10 a.m. But people would have been arriving early. Staff. Security. His team. Malcolm's people. The building commission representatives. The security guard. Lori gasped between sobs. "There's one security guard, Franklin something," he made it out. "He's telling the police. David, he said he saw something. Right before it fell, he saw." The line went dead. David stood frozen in his kitchen, paint thinner still on his hands, staring at the television as the Meridian Tower, 42 stories that shouldn't have been standing in the first place, became 42 stories of rubble and death. And he should have been inside. Chapter 2. The Survivor's Guilt. The next 6 hours blurred together in a nightmare of phone calls, news reports, and steadily climbing death tolls. David sat in his living room, unable to move, watching the same footage loop endlessly. The tower standing proud against the Boston skyline one moment, pancaking into itself the next, like a controlled demolition, except no one had controlled anything. Except someone had. The thought crystallized slowly, pushing through the shock. David had spent 8 months studying that building's structural modifications. He'd documented every shortcut, every substituted material, every concerning calculation. Buildings that size didn't just collapse on a clear Tuesday morning. Not without help. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Colleagues, friends, reporters who'd somehow gotten his number, asking why he wasn't in the building, what he knew about the structural integrity, whether he'd seen this coming. No comment. He repeated mechanically, ending each call. Lori came home at 2:30 p.m., pale and shaking. She'd been at the police station giving a statement, then at the hospital checking on coworkers. 7 people from her leasing office had been inside. None survived. They held each other on the couch, not speaking, the TV continuing its relentless coverage. By 4 p.m., the official count stood at 63 confirmed dead, dozens more missing in the rubble. The fire department had given up on rescue operations. This was now a recovery mission. At 5:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after David had woken up, there was a knock at the door. 2 men stood on his porch. Detective Brian Brock, homicide, and Detective Sean Saunders, major crimes. They held up badges. "Mr. Jarvis? We'd like to ask you some questions about the Meridian Tower." David let them in. They sat in his living room, notebooks out, while Lori hovered nervously in the doorway. "You were scheduled to be in the building this morning," Brock said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. 10 a.m. meeting. I was running late." "Why?" David explained about the paint, Gatsby, the mess. As he spoke, he watched their faces. They weren't just taking notes. They were studying him, looking for tells, inconsistencies, signs of deception. "Lucky cat," Saunders said dryly. "What's this about?" David asked. "Are you investigating me?" "We're investigating everyone connected to the building," Brock replied. "You're a structural consultant." In your professional opinion, what caused the collapse? David chose his words carefully. I'd need to examine the debris, review engineering reports, analyze the failure pattern. But preliminarily, buildings don't fail like that without significant structural deficiencies. Had you identified such deficiencies? Yes. I documented extensive concerns in my draft report. Substandard materials, modified load calculations, insufficient reinforcement, and critical support columns. I was presenting those findings this morning. The detectives exchanged glances. Do you still have that report? Saunders asked. Yes. And all my source documentation, photographs, material samples. Everything. We're going to need copies of all of that. David nodded slowly, his mind racing. You don't think this was an accident? Brock stood, signaling the interview was over. We're not ruling anything out. Mr. Jarvis, don't leave the city. We'll be in touch. After they left, Lori turned to him, face white. David, they think someone did this on purpose. They think it was murder. I know. And you were supposed to be there. You were supposed to be in that building. I know, he repeated, pulling her close. But he was thinking about Malcolm Calhoun's phone call that morning. Don't make this difficult. About the timing, 9:07 a.m., almost an hour before the scheduled meeting, when only early arrivals would be inside. About the security guard who'd survived, who'd seen something. At 8:32 p.m., David's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me. Midnight. Old Harbor Diner on Seaport. Come alone. I know what happened. Franklin Wilder. David stared at the message. Franklin Wilder. The security guard. He deleted the text and told Lori he was going to bed early. At 11:47 p.m., he slipped out of the house. Chapter 3. The Witness. The Old Harbor Diner squatted between a closed fish market and an auto body shop, the kind of place that catered to third-shift workers and insomniacs. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed over cracked vinyl booths. A tired waitress refilled coffee for a lone trucker. The smell of burnt coffee and grease hung in the air. Franklin Wilder sat in the back corner booth, hunched over a cup of black coffee. He was in his late 50s, gray stubble on his weathered face, hands that trembled slightly as he raised the cup to his lips. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. David slid into the booth across from him. You're the security guard. Franklin nodded. Ground floor. North entrance. 22 years at that post. His voice was rough, scraped raw. I clocked in at 6 a.m. like always. Made my rounds at 6:30, 7:30, 8:30. Everything normal until... He stopped, swallowed hard. Until what? David prompted gently. Until 9:02. I'm at my desk, watching the monitors. There's maybe 30 people in the building. Early birds. Cleaning crew. Some executives. Then I see him. Who? Malcolm Calhoun. Coming out of the basement. The maintenance level. He's not supposed to be down there. Building doesn't officially open until 9:30, and he certainly doesn't do maintenance work. Franklin's hands tightened around his coffee cup. But that's not what made me notice. It's what he's carrying. David leaned forward. What was he carrying? A bag. A duffel bag. Black, heavy looking. And his clothes, they're dirty. Dust on his pants, his jacket. Like he's been working down there. Franklin met David's eyes. I've seen controlled demolitions, Mr. Jarvis. My brother's in construction. I know what they look like. And at 9:02, when I see Malcolm Calhoun coming up from the basement looking like he's been handling explosives, I know something's wrong. What did you do? I got up, started walking toward him to ask what he was doing. He sees me, and his face. Franklin shuddered. I've never seen someone look so cold. He says, you should leave, Franklin. Take a break. Long walk. Just like that. Calm as anything. And then he walks out the front door. And you left, David guessed. I ran, Franklin admitted, shame in his voice. Something in his eyes told me if I stayed, I'd die. So I ran. I was 50 yards away when I heard the first crack. I turned around just in time to see the support columns on the ground floor buckle. Then the whole thing came down. David sat back, processing. You told the police this? Of course I told them. They took my statement, wrote it all down. Then about an hour later, this detective comes back, guy named Saunders, and he says, Mr. Wilder, are you sure about the timeline? Because we've got security footage showing Malcolm Calhoun was at his office in Cambridge at 8:45 a.m., and phone records putting him on a conference call from 8:30 to 9:15. That's impossible. You saw him. I know what I saw. Franklin slammed his palm on the table, drawing a glance from the waitress. He lowered his voice. They're saying I'm confused. Traumatized. That maybe I saw someone else, or maybe I saw Malcolm earlier and I'm misremembering. They're making me look like an unreliable witness. David's mind raced. The security footage. From the building. Did they recover it? That's the thing. There's nothing to recover. The entire security system was analog, recorded on-site. Everything was destroyed in the collapse. The only footage is from external cameras, street views, and those don't show the basement or the lobby clearly. Convenient, isn't it? Franklin's jaw tightened. I know what I saw, Mr. Jarvis. Malcolm Calhoun brought that building down. Killed 63 people. And he's going to get away with it because he's rich and connected, and he's got alibis, and I'm just a security guard who can't prove anything. David was quiet for a long moment. Why contact me? Because you were supposed to die too, Franklin said bluntly. Your name was on the meeting list. 10 a.m., conference room A, 40th floor. Malcolm knew you'd be there. Whatever report you were going to present, he didn't want anyone hearing it. So he killed 63 people to silence me? No. He killed 63 people because it was easier than facing the consequences of building a death trap. The insurance payout on Meridian Tower is $400 million. He's already filed the claim. Structural failure, act of God, tragic accident. He walks away rich and free, and everyone who could contradict his story is dead. Except you. And me. Franklin nodded grimly. Which is why I'm leaving Boston tomorrow. Going to my brother's place in Montana, changing my name, disappearing. You should do the same. Or, David said slowly, I could finish what I started. Franklin stared at him. You want to go after Malcolm Calhoun? The man who just murdered 63 people and made it look like an accident? Who's got enough money and power to erase evidence and silence witnesses? I've got 8 months of documentation proving his building was structurally unsound. I've got photographs, material analyses, engineering calculations. I've got your testimony about what you saw. My testimony isn't worth anything without proof. Then we get proof. David's voice was calm, but something hard had settled behind his eyes. You said the security system was analog, recorded on-site. But you monitored from a central desk, right? Multiple cameras? 37 cameras throughout the building. And they all fed to your station. Did you ever make personal copies? Back anything up? Franklin hesitated. There's a protocol against it, but sometimes when there were incidents, thefts, disputes, I'd make copies on a thumb drive. For my own protection. Do you still have those drives? Maybe. I don't know what's on them, or how far back they go. David leaned forward, eyes intense. Find them. Go through every minute of footage you have from the past month. If Malcolm was planning this, he would have needed access to the basement, to the support structures. He would have needed time to set up whatever brought that building down. Find me evidence, Franklin. Find me proof. And if I do, what then? We go to the police with a thumb drive? They'll say it's compromised, inadmissible, that you doctored it. We're not going to the police, David said quietly. We're going to bury him ourselves. Franklin studied him for a long moment. You've got a look about you. Like you've made up your mind about something permanent. I have. 63 people died because Malcolm Calhoun values profit over lives. One of them could have been my wife. All of them should have been me. I'm not letting him walk away. This won't be legal. I don't care. It might not even be safe. Nothing about this is safe, David replied. But it's right. Franklin was quiet, turning his coffee cup in his hands. Finally, he nodded. I'll look through my archives. If I find anything, I'll contact you. But after that, I'm gone. I've got grandkids in Montana. I'd like to live to see them grow up. Understood. David stood, dropping 2 20s on the table. Be careful, Franklin. If Malcolm thinks you're a threat, I'm already a threat. That's why I'm running. Franklin looked up at him. You should run too, Mr. Jarvis. Men like Malcolm Calhoun don't leave loose ends. David walked out into the cold November night, the weight of what he'd decided settling over him like a heavy coat. He wasn't running. He was hunting. Chapter 4, The Devil's Blueprints. 3 days after the collapse, David stood at Laurie's side in a church packed with mourners. The memorial service honored all 63 victims at once. There were too many individual funerals for the city to manage separately. Laurie clutched his hand as they read the names. Jennifer Chun, 29, Marketing Coordinator. Marcus Williams, 51, Building Engineer. Samuel Glover, 34, architect. David recognized that last name. Sam Glover had been one of Malcolm's original design team, vocal about the corner cutting. He'd been reassigned to a different project 6 months ago. Now he was dead. Malcolm Calhoun sat in the front row, flanked by lawyers and PR people, looking appropriately devastated. When he took the podium to speak, his voice broke at all the right moments. "These were my people," he said, tears in his eyes. "My colleagues, my friends. I built that tower to stand for 100 years, to be a monument to Boston's future. That it failed, that it took these beautiful souls. I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life." David's hands clenched into fists. Lori squeezed harder. "Easy," she whispered. "Not here." After the service, people milled around offering condolences, sharing stories. David noticed Detective Brock watching from the periphery, studying faces, taking notes. Their eyes met briefly. Brock tilted his head, an invitation. David excused himself and joined the detective outside. "Nice service," Brock said, lighting a cigarette. "Though I always find it interesting who shows up to these things. Guilty parties like to watch the aftermath. Feel powerful. You think Malcolm killed those people. I think a 42-story building doesn't spontaneously collapse. I think the preliminary engineering reports show signs of explosive failure in the support columns. I think Malcolm Calhoun had 400 million reasons to want that building gone." Brock took a drag. "But thinking and proving are different things. What about Franklin Wilder's testimony? Security guard claims he saw Malcolm in the basement at 9:02 a.m. Malcolm's got video evidence putting him in Cambridge at 8:45, phone records for a call from 8:30 to 9:15, and 3 witnesses who say he was in a breakfast meeting until 9:30. Brock shook his head. "Wilder's not lying. I believe he saw someone. But it wasn't Malcolm. Couldn't have been. Unless the alibi's fabricated. You know how hard it is to fake time-stamped security footage and phone company records? Not to mention coordinating live witnesses." Brock crushed out his cigarette. "Malcolm's untouchable, Mr. Jarvis. Whatever he did, however he did it, he covered his tracks perfectly. Nothing's perfect." Brock smiled grimly. "Maybe you'll find what we can't. You were his target too, after all. Man who tries to kill you and fails. That's personal. Are you suggesting I conduct my own investigation? I'm suggesting you're a structural engineer with 8 months of documentation on a building that collapsed. FBI's gonna want to talk to you eventually. Might want to organize your findings." Brock handed him a card with a handwritten number. "That's my personal cell. You discover anything interesting, call me. Day or night." That evening, David locked himself in his home office. He spread out every document, photograph, and analysis he'd collected on the Meridian Tower. 8 months of work covered every surface. Material receipts showing grade substitutions, photographs of substandard concrete pours, calculations demonstrating inadequate load support. But none of it proved deliberate sabotage. It showed negligence, cost-cutting, dangerous construction practices. It could end Malcolm's career, maybe even lead to criminal charges for corporate manslaughter. But it wouldn't prove murder. At 11:34 p.m., his phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Check your email. FW." David opened his laptop. One new message from a burner account, no subject line. The attachment was a compressed video file labeled Meridian_October 15_2300-020. He downloaded it, heart pounding. The footage was grainy, black and white security camera feed from the basement level. Timestamp showed October 15th, 11:47 p.m. The frame showed a maintenance corridor, pipes and ductwork visible along the ceiling. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a figure entered frame. Male, medium height, wearing maintenance coveralls and a baseball cap pulled low. He carried a bag and moved with purpose to a support column. He set down the bag, pulled out tools, and began working on something David couldn't quite see. The figure worked for 43 minutes, occasionally checking his phone, making adjustments. At 12:30 a.m., he packed up and left frame. David rewound, paused, enhanced the image as much as the quality allowed. The man's face was never visible, always angled away from the camera. But his build, his movements, the expensive watch visible when his sleeve rode up. His phone rang. Franklin Wilder. "Did you get it?" Franklin asked without preamble. "I'm watching it now. October 15th. Who is this?" "Keep watching. I've got 4 more dates. October 15th, 18th, 22nd, 27th, and November 2nd. Always between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Always the same person, same routine. He's installing something in those columns. Drilling, placing something inside, sealing it up. David's engineering training kicked in. Shaped charges. Linear cutting charges placed against support columns. Set them off in the right sequence, and you can drop a building exactly how you want. That's what I figured. Military-grade demolition. But you can't see his face. Can't prove it's Malcolm. Fifth video, Franklin said. November 2nd. Watch until the end. David fast-forwarded to the November 2nd file. Same scene, same mysterious figure. But at 1:47 a.m., the man's phone rang. He answered, spoke briefly. No audio on the security feed, and in turning to pace, his face caught the camera for exactly 3 seconds. David paused the frame, enhanced it, and felt his breath catch. It wasn't Malcolm Calhoun. It was Jim West, Malcolm's head of construction. The man who'd supervised every aspect of the Meridian build. Jim West, David breathed. Malcolm's attack dog, Franklin confirmed. Does all his dirty work. But here's the interesting part. I dug into West's background. Former Army Corps of Engineers, demolition specialist. Dishonorably discharged in 2003 for unauthorized use of explosives. He's worked for Malcolm ever since. So Malcolm didn't do it himself. He had West do it. Which means we still can't prove Malcolm ordered it. West could claim he acted alone, had a grudge, whatever. Malcolm walks away clean. David stared at the frozen image of Jim West's face. Unless we make West talk. Good luck with that. Guy's a psychopath. He won't crack under pressure. Everyone cracks, David said quietly. You just need to find the right pressure point. He spent the next 2 days digging into Jim West's life. Military records, employment history, financial statements, social media. West lived alone in a modest apartment in Quincy, drove a beat-up pickup, kept to himself. No family, no close friends, no obvious vulnerabilities. But he had a routine. Every Thursday night, West went to a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor in South Boston. He'd sit in the same booth, drink whiskey, and play poker with 3 other regulars. He'd stay until midnight, then drive home. Thursday night, David was waiting. Chapter 5, The Pressure Point. The Rusty Anchor smelled like stale beer and bad decisions. David sat at the bar nursing a club soda, watching Jim West in the corner booth, cards in hand. West was a thick-shouldered man in his 50s, with cold eyes and scarred knuckles. He won most hands, collected his money without gloating, drank methodically. At 11:47 p.m., West cashed out and headed for the door. David followed at a distance. West's pickup was parked in a poorly lit lot behind the bar. David waited until West unlocked the door, then stepped out of the shadows. Jim West. West spun, hand going to his jacket. David raised his hands, showing they were empty. I'm not armed. Just want to talk. West's eyes narrowed. I know you. You're that consultant. Jarvis. You were supposed to be in the Meridian. Lucky me, right? What do you want? The truth about what happened. West laughed, a harsh sound. Building collapsed. Tragic accident. What's to know? I know about the shaped charges in the support columns. I know you installed them over 5 nights in October and early November. I have security footage showing your face. West's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted, subtle, dangerous. You're making serious accusations. I'm stating facts. The question is what we do about them. You should go to the police, West said. That's what innocent people do. I'm not interested in police. I'm interested in Malcolm. That got a reaction, a slight tightening around West's eyes. You think Malcolm had something to do with this? I know he did. You're his construction chief. You don't plant explosives in his flagship building without his orders. But I also know you're the one who'll take the fall if this comes out. Malcolm's got alibis, lawyers, distance. You've got your face on security footage planting bombs. West was quiet for a long moment. Even if any of this were true, which I'm not saying it is, why would I talk to you? Because Malcolm's setting you up, David said. Think about it. He knows that footage exists. Security systems have backups. Eventually, someone finds it. When they do, whose face do they see? Not Malcolm's. Yours. You'll get charged with 63 counts of murder while Malcolm plays the victim. Claims he had no idea his construction chief was sabotaging the building. Malcolm wouldn't do that. Malcolm killed 63 people for insurance money. You think he'd hesitate to throw you under the bus? West's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Then educate me. Tell me what really happened. Tell me why. For a moment, David thought West might actually talk. He saw something flicker in the man's eyes. Doubt. Maybe. Or fear. But then West's expression hardened. Get the fuck away from me, Jarvis. And if you're smart, you'll stop asking questions. Men who threaten Malcolm Calhoun tend to have accidents. He climbed into his truck and drove away. David stood in the parking lot, his heart hammering. He'd pushed too hard, too fast. West wasn't going to flip. He was too loyal, too deep in Malcolm's pocket, or too scared. He needed a different approach. The next morning, David called Detective Brock. I've got security footage showing Jim West planting explosives in the Meridian Tower basement, he said without preamble. Silence. Then, can you prove it's West? Clear facial recognition on one frame. Plus, I can identify the materials as military-grade shaped charges based on the installation method. Send me everything. I'll bring West in for questioning. He won't talk. He's too protected. Let me worry about that. You did good work, Jarvis. David hung up, but he didn't feel good. He felt like he'd just sacrificed a pawn without gaining any advantage. West would lawyer up, refuse to answer questions, maybe even skip town, and Malcolm would remain untouchable. That afternoon, Lori found him in his office, staring at crime scene photos from the Meridian collapse. You need to stop, she said quietly. I can't. David, the police have it now. You did your part. Let them handle it. They can't touch Malcolm. Not without proof he ordered it. And West won't give them that. Lori sat beside him, took his hand. I'm worried about you. You're not sleeping. Barely eating. This obsession. It's not obsession. It's justice. It's revenge, she corrected. And I understand why. But revenge won't bring those people back. It won't change what happened. It'll make sure Malcolm pays for what he did. Or it'll get you killed. Her eyes were wet. I almost lost you once. That cat. That stupid cat and some spilled paint. That's the only reason I still have you. I'm not losing you to this. David pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I'm sorry. I know I've been distant. But I can't let this go. Not until he pays. Then promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. He promised, knowing it was a lie. That night, David received an email from an encrypted address. Mr. Jarvis, we should meet. I have information about Malcolm Calhoun that you'll want to hear. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Public Gardens, the bridge. Come alone. MK. MK. David ran through everyone connected to the case. No one with those initials. It could be a trap. Malcolm could know he was investigating, could be luring him out, or it could be the break he needed. At 1:55 p.m. the next day, David stood on the bridge in the Public Gardens, watching swans glide across the pond. The November air was cold, the park nearly empty. At 2:03 p.m., a woman approached. She was in her mid-30s, professional attire, expensive coat. Her dark hair was pulled back, her expression carefully neutral. Mr. Jarvis? That's me. I'm May Khan, she said, extending her hand. I'm Malcolm Calhoun's former accountant. Chapter 6, The Paper Trail. Macon didn't look like someone who'd betray her former employer. She looked like someone who'd testify before Congress without flinching. Sharp eyes, firm handshake, the kind of composure that came from managing other people's millions. Former accountant? David asked. As of 3 days ago, I resigned. She glanced around the empty park. Can we walk? They moved along the path, their breath steaming in the cold air. Why contact me? David asked. Because you're the only person actively trying to stop Malcolm, who isn't a cop hamstrung by procedure. May pulled her coat tighter. I worked for Malcolm for 6 years. Managed his personal finances, his corporate accounts, his various holding companies. I knew he cut corners. I knew he played fast with the books. But I thought it was just rich guy stuff. Tax avoidance, creative accounting. Nothing that actually hurt anyone. Until the Meridian. Until the Meridian, she confirmed. When I saw the news, saw those people die, I started going through the accounts more carefully. And I found things that didn't make sense. Like what? May handed him a flash drive. 3 weeks before the collapse, Malcolm transferred $8 million from Calhoun Development to a shell company in the Caymans. The company doesn't exist, it's just a tax dodge. 2 weeks before the collapse, that shell company paid $3 million to another company, also fake, registered in Delaware. Money laundering. That's what I thought too. But then I traced the Delaware company's transactions. It paid a consulting fee of $750,000 to a private contractor. No name, just a numbered account. Jim West, David guessed. I don't know. But here's what's interesting. The payment was coded as structural consulting, and it was made on October 14th, the day before West started installing the explosives. Malcolm paid someone $750,000 through 2 layers of shell companies the day before his own building was sabotaged. Prepayment for services rendered, May said. I can't prove it in court. The shell companies provide too much deniability. But the timing, the amount, the coding, Malcolm paid for that building to come down. Why tell me this? Why not go to the FBI? May stopped walking, turned to face him. Because I did go to the FBI. Yesterday, I gave them copies of everything. You know what they said? They said it's suspicious, but not conclusive. They said they'd look into it, but it could take months to unravel the corporate structure. They said thank you for the information and showed me the door. Her hands clenched into fists. 63 people died, Mr. Jarvis. I did Malcolm's taxes. I filed his reports. I helped him hide money that he then used to murder people. So yes, I went to the authorities. But I'm not stopping there. I'm giving you everything I have because I think you'll actually do something with it. David studied her. You want revenge too. I want accountability. There's a difference. She nodded at the flash drive. Everything's on there. Bank records, wire transfer receipts, corporate filings, emails. Build your case. Expose him. I don't care how you do it. Legal, illegal, whatever. Just make sure Malcolm Calhoun doesn't get away with this. He'll come after you when he finds out you leaked this. I've already left the state. I'm staying with family in Oregon until this is over. As far as Malcolm knows, I resigned for personal reasons and moved away. He has no idea what I took. He'll figure it out. Then he'll figure it out, May said grimly. But by then, it'll be too late. She walked away without another word, leaving David standing on the bridge with a flash drive containing 8 million reasons to destroy Malcolm Calhoun. He went straight home, locked himself in his office, and spent the next 6 hours going through May's files. She hadn't exaggerated. This was the entire financial roadmap of Malcolm's operation. Shell companies within shell companies, money moving through a dozen jurisdictions, carefully structured to avoid scrutiny. But the October 14th payment was the smoking gun. $750,000 coded as structural consulting to a numbered account. David cross-referenced the dates with Franklin's security footage. Perfect correlation. He called Franklin. I need you to find out who owns account number 847-392, KK, in the Delaware Corporate Bank. That's impossible without a subpoena. Find a way. 2 days later, Franklin called back. You're not going to like this. Tell me. The account belongs to a consulting firm called West Point Engineering Solutions, owned by James T. West. Your boy. David closed his eyes. There it was. Direct payment from Malcolm to West, timed exactly with the sabotage operation. It wasn't ironclad. Malcolm could claim he hired West for legitimate consulting, but combined with the security footage, it built a compelling case. He called Detective Brock. I've got financial records linking Malcolm Calhoun to Jim West, including a $750,000 payment made the day before West started planting explosives. Brock whistled low. Where'd you get these records? Anonymous source. Anonymous doesn't hold up in court. Then get a warrant. Force Malcolm to produce his financial records. The payment's real, you'll find it. On what grounds? We don't have probable cause to search Malcolm's accounts. You have security footage of West planting explosives. You have my engineering report showing the building was structurally compromised. You have 63 dead bodies. Get a judge to sign off. Silence. Then, I'll try. But Jarvis, Malcolm's got high-powered lawyers. Even if we get the warrant, even if we find the payment, he'll claim it was legitimate consulting fees. We need West to flip. We need testimony that Malcolm ordered the sabotage. Then make West flip. We brought him in for questioning yesterday. He lawyered up immediately, wouldn't say a word. We can hold him for 48 hours max without charges. After that, he walks. David's mind raced. What if West didn't walk? What do you mean? What if something happened to him before the 48 hours are up? Something that made him more cooperative? Jarvis, I'm a cop. I can't. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if someone convinced West to talk during those 48 hours, that testimony would be admissible, right? A long pause. If it was voluntarily given, yes. Good to know. David hung up before Brock could object. West was being held at the Suffolk County Jail. 48 hours meant he'd be released Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Today was Friday afternoon. David had roughly 40 hours to make Jim West betray Malcolm Calhoun. He made a phone call to a number he'd found in May's files, a private investigator Malcolm had used for background checks. David introduced himself as a friend of Malcolm's, said he needed help with a delicate matter, offered double the usual rate. The investigator agreed to meet. At midnight, David laid out his plan. It was risky, probably illegal, definitely dangerous. But it would work. It had to work. Chapter 7, Breaking Point. The private investigator's name was Dale Welch, a former cop turned mercenary, the kind of man who'd do anything for the right price. David met him in the parking lot of a closed shopping mall, handed him an envelope containing $20,000 in cash. "You're sure you want to do this?" Dale asked, counting the bills. "I'm sure. Can you make it happen? For this price?" "Absolutely." Dale pocketed the money. "Give me 6 hours." David drove home, showered, changed into dark clothes, and waited. At 6 a.m. Saturday morning, his phone buzzed. "It's done. DW." David drove to Suffolk County Jail and requested a meeting with Jim West. The guard looked skeptical. West wasn't allowed visitors without his lawyer present, but David dropped Detective Brock's name, said it was related to the Meridian investigation, and was grudgingly allowed 15 minutes in a private consultation room. West sat handcuffed to a table, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his face drawn. When David entered, something like relief flickered across his expression before hardening into anger. "Jarvis, come to gloat. I came to offer you a deal. I've got a lawyer. I don't need your deals." "Your lawyer's good," David said, sitting across from him. "But he can't help you with this." He slid a photograph across the table. West stared at it, and all the color drained from his face. The photo showed a woman in her 30s, dark hair, pretty smile, pushing a stroller through a park. She was laughing at something off camera. "Her name is Kelly Gibbs," David said quietly. "She's your daughter." West's hands clenched. "I don't have a daughter." "You did. 19 years ago, before you left for the army. Her mother, Jessica Gibbs, didn't tell you she was pregnant. Raised Kelly alone. But Kelly found out about you 3 years ago, tracked you down. She's been watching you from a distance, trying to decide whether to reach out." West's breathing was shallow. "How do you?" "She works as a paralegal in Cambridge. Lives in a studio apartment on Maple Street. Has a 2-year-old daughter named Emma, your granddaughter. They go to the park every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. David leaned forward. "Right now, it's 6:15 a.m. At 9 a.m., Kelly will be at that park. And unless you give me what I need, she's going to have a very bad day." West lunged across the table, chains snapping taut. "You touch her, I'll fucking kill you." "I won't touch her," David said calmly. "But the man I hired will. Unless you cooperate. Then I call him off. And Kelly never knows she was in danger. Your choice, Jim. You're bluffing." "Am I?" David stood, headed for the door. "I guess we'll find out at 9:01 when my guy makes contact." "Wait." West's voice cracked. "Wait. What do you want?" David turned back. "I want the truth about Malcolm Calhoun. I want you to confess that he ordered you to sabotage the Meridian Tower. I want a recorded statement that will hold up in court. He'll kill me. Maybe. But if you don't talk, your daughter dies. And then Malcolm kills you anyway, because you're a liability he can't afford." West slumped in his chair, defeat written across his face. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking. Malcolm murdered 63 people. He paid you to do it. Now he's going to pay for it, one way or another." For a long moment, West said nothing. Then, quietly, "I need immunity. Full immunity from prosecution. Talk to Detective Brock. He can arrange it. And my daughter stays safe? You have my word." West laughed bitterly. "The word of a man who just threatened to kill my daughter. That's supposed to reassure me?" "It's better than Malcolm's word," David pointed out. "He's already planning to sacrifice you. At least I'm giving you a choice." West closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, something had broken inside. "Get Brock. I'll tell him everything." 3 hours later, David sat in an observation room watching Jim West's confession through one-way glass. Detective Brock and an assistant district attorney asked questions while a camera recorded every word. "Malcolm approached me last August," West said, his voice flat, emotionless. "Said the Meridian project was going to bankrupt him. cost overruns, delays, structural issues that would require expensive fixes. He'd already sunk $200 million into it. If he completed it properly, he'd barely break even. But the insurance policy, that was worth $400 million. So he asked you to destroy it, the ADA said. Not at first. At first, he just wanted me to make sure the building stayed problematic. Use cheap materials, skip inspections, create plausible reasons for delays. But then Jarvis started investigating. Malcolm knew the report would expose everything, kill the project, maybe even lead to criminal charges. So he ordered you to bring the building down. West nodded. Make it look like structural failure. Blame it on the cost-cutting. Make it seem like a tragic accident rather than deliberate sabotage. Kill the building, collect the insurance, get rid of the evidence against him. And kill anyone who knew too much, Brock added. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Malcolm knew exactly who'd be there. Jarvis, the building commission, his own executives who'd raised concerns. He planned it for 9:07 to catch the early arrivals. Make sure the key witnesses died. Why'd you go along with it? West's jaw tightened. He paid me. And he owned me. I had things in my past, things Malcolm knew about. He said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure those things came to light. So I did what he asked. Installing the explosives. Military-grade shaped charges, placed against the primary support columns. Timed detonators, all linked to a central trigger. I set them off remotely at 9:07 from my apartment in Quincy. Then I drove to Malcolm's office, gave him the confirmation code, collected my payment. The ADA leaned forward. You're saying Malcolm Calhoun knew the exact moment the building would collapse? That he was an active participant? He pressed the button, West said quietly. I set up the system, but he insisted on being the one to trigger it. Said it was his building, his decision. I gave him the remote, showed him which button to press. He pressed it at exactly 9:07. David felt something cold settle in his chest. Malcolm hadn't just ordered the murder, he'd personally executed it. The confession continued for another hour, West detailing every aspect of the plan, every conversation, every payment. By the time it ended, the ADA was smiling. This is enough, she said. We can arrest Malcolm Calhoun tonight. Do it, Brock agreed. David left the police station at 3 p.m., exhausted but grimly satisfied. He'd gotten what he needed. West's confession would destroy Malcolm. The financial records from Macon provided corroboration. The security footage proved West's presence. Together, it was an airtight case. He called Dale Welch. Call it off. Already done. The girl never knew anything was happening. David felt a twist of guilt. Kelly Gibbs was innocent. Using her as leverage against West had been ruthless, maybe even cruel. But 63 people were dead. Ruthless was necessary. He drove home, planning to sleep for 12 hours straight. Instead, he found his front door ajar. Chapter 8, The Final Move. David's hand went to his phone, ready to call 911, but something stopped him. The door wasn't broken. It had been opened with a key, and the house was too quiet. If this was a break-in, he'd hear something. Movement, voices, search sounds. This wasn't random. He pushed the door open slowly, listening. Nothing. He stepped inside. Hello, David. Malcolm Calhoun sat in David's living room, comfortable as if he owned the place, holding a glass of David's own whiskey. He looked calm, almost amused, like this was a social call. I let myself in, Malcolm continued. Hope you don't mind. We need to talk. David's mind raced. Where's Lori? Your wife's safe. She's at her sister's place in Connecticut, remember? You texted her earlier suggesting she spend the weekend there. Malcolm smiled. Or rather, I texted her from your phone. Technology's wonderful. The police know everything. West confessed. It's over. Jim's confession? Yes, I heard. Fascinating story. Troubled employee with a history of explosives work goes rogue, sabotages building, tries to frame his innocent employer. Malcolm sipped his whiskey. His word against mine. And I've got alibis, David. Ironclad alibis. You've got fake alibis. We can prove they were fabricated. Can you? My lawyers don't think so. In fact, my lawyers think this whole case is circumstantial. Security footage shows West, not me. Financial records show a legitimate consulting payment. West's confession is coerced. He'll claim you threatened him, made him lie. I didn't threaten him. Malcolm's smile widened. No? Funny, because I have a recording of you in that jail, telling Jim you'd hurt his daughter if he didn't cooperate. Turns out the consultation room has cameras. Audio too. The ADA's going to love that. David's blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? Malcolm pulled out his phone, played a clip. David's voice, clear as day. Right now, it's 6:15 a.m. At 9 a.m., Kelly will be at that park. And unless you give me what I need, she's going to have a very bad day. That's illegal surveillance, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe. Or maybe it's evidence of witness tampering, coercion, and conspiracy to commit assault. Either way, it destroys West's confession. Makes you look like the criminal. Malcolm stood, set down his glass. You played a good game, David. Really. You found evidence, turned my own man against me, built a case. But you forgot who you're dealing with. A murderer. A businessman, Malcolm corrected. I make calculated decisions based on cost-benefit analysis. The Meridian was costing me more than it was worth. 63 people was an acceptable loss compared to bankruptcy and prison for fraud. You're admitting it. To you. Because you're not leaving this room alive to tell anyone. David tensed, looking for escape routes, weapons, anything. You're going to kill me here? In my own house. The police will know it was you. Will they? See, here's what happened. David Jarvis, consumed by guilt over the Meridian collapse, distraught over his role in the building's structural failures, spiraled into depression. His wife left him. His career was over. He couldn't handle it. Malcolm pulled out a gun, sleek, suppressed, professional. So he killed himself. Single shot to the head. Very tragic. Lori knows I didn't have depression. Lori will believe what the evidence shows. And the evidence, the texts, the emails, the journal entries I'm going to create, will show a man falling apart. No one will question it. Malcolm raised the gun, aimed it at David's head. David didn't move. His mind was working, calculating angles, timing, probabilities. Malcolm was right about one thing. He'd underestimated his opponent. But Malcolm had made a mistake too. He'd come alone. Before you pull that trigger, David said calmly, you should know I've been recording this conversation. Malcolm's expression flickered. You're bluffing. Am I? David pulled out his phone, showed the recording app running, timestamp showing it had started the moment he entered the house. You just confessed to 63 murders. On tape. In detail. Give me that phone. Or what? You'll kill me? You're already planning to do that. But if I'm dead and this recording disappears, the police will wonder why. They'll investigate. They'll find the truth. Malcolm's hand tightened on the gun. I'll say the recording's fake. Doctored. AI generated. Maybe. But it'll raise questions. And combined with West's confession, Macon's financial records, Franklin Wilder's testimony, it becomes a pattern. Evidence piling up. Even your expensive lawyers can't defend against this much smoke. Then I'll destroy all of it. Kill West, kill Kahn, kill Wilder. Eliminate every witness. You can't kill everyone, Malcolm. That's your fundamental problem. You thought you could control the narrative, eliminate the threats, but it's too late. The truth is out. Multiple people know it. The more you try to bury it, the more it spreads. Malcolm's face twisted with rage. You self-righteous son of a bitch. You think you're the hero? You threatened a woman and child. You blackmailed a witness. You're no better than me. Maybe not, David agreed. But I'm still alive. And you're about to be arrested. The front door burst open. Detective Brock entered, gun drawn, followed by 4 uniformed officers. Malcolm Calhoun dropped the weapon. Now, Malcolm spun, gun swinging toward Brock. 3 officers fired simultaneously. Malcolm collapsed, blood spreading across David's hardwood floor. Brock kicked the gun away, checked Malcolm's pulse. He's alive. Call an ambulance. David stood frozen, staring at Malcolm's body. It was over. Actually over. How'd you know he'd come here? David asked. I didn't, Brock admitted. But after West's confession, I figured Malcolm would try something desperate. So I had a unit watching your house. When we saw him enter, we gave him enough rope to hang himself. Got the whole confession on audio. He looked at David. You okay? I'm alive. You're also under investigation for witness tampering. That stunt you pulled with West. I know. I'll deal with it. Brock nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you did good work. 63 people got justice today because you wouldn't let it go. 63 people died because I didn't push hard enough before the collapse, David corrected. This doesn't make us even. But watching the paramedics load Malcolm onto a stretcher, watching the cops cuff his unconscious body, David felt something close to peace. It wasn't over yet. There would be trials, investigations, consequences for his own actions. But Malcolm Calhoun would pay. Jim West would pay. Justice, messy and imperfect as it was, would be served. Chapter 9. Aftermath. 6 months later, David stood outside the Suffolk County Courthouse, watching news crews pack up their equipment. The trial had lasted 8 weeks. The verdict came in that morning. Malcolm Calhoun, guilty on 63 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and criminal negligence. Recommended sentence: life without parole. Jim West had pleaded guilty in exchange for testimony and received 25 years. Macon was granted immunity for her cooperation. Franklin Wilder returned from Montana to testify and was hailed as a hero. David had faced his own reckoning. The witness tampering charges were dropped after the ADA determined that while his methods were questionable, they'd ultimately served justice. He was censured by the engineering board for ethical violations, but allowed to keep his license. Lori stood by him through it all, though their relationship remained strained. "It's not that I don't understand why you did it," she'd said one night, weeks after Malcolm's arrest. "It's that I don't recognize who you became. The man I married wouldn't have threatened an innocent woman to get revenge. The man you married didn't watch 63 people die," David had replied. "I'm not that person anymore. I can't be." They were working through it. Couples therapy, long conversations, rebuilding trust. It was slow, painful work, but they were trying. Now, standing in the courthouse plaza, David felt someone approach. He turned to find Kelly Gibbs, Jim West's daughter, pushing a stroller with her daughter Emma. "Mr. Jarvis," she said quietly, "can we talk?" David tensed. "I owe you an apology. You used me as leverage against my father," she interrupted. "A father I didn't even know I had until 3 years ago. A father I've been too scared to approach because his life seemed so dark, so violent." "I know. There's no excuse for it. But you also saved my life," Kelly continued. "The investigator you hired, Dale Welch, he's the one who warned me about my father. Told me who he was, what he'd done, suggested I stay away. I didn't understand why at the time. But after the trial, after everything came out, I realized that if my father had stayed loyal to Malcolm, if he'd kept quiet, Malcolm would have eventually found out I existed. Would have used me to keep my father in line, or killed me to tie up loose ends." She reached into her stroller, pulled out an envelope. "This is from my father. He asked me to give it to you." David opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note. "Jarvis, you were right. Malcolm would have thrown me away, used my daughter to control me, then killed us both when we stopped being useful. You gave me a chance to protect her by telling the truth. I don't forgive you for threatening her, but I understand why you did it. And I'm grateful she's safe. JW." "He's dying," Kelly said softly. "Cancer. The doctors say he has maybe 6 months. He asked if I'd visit him before the end. I'm considering it." "You should," David said. "Whatever else he did, he's still your father. And he made the right choice when it mattered." Kelly nodded, took back the letter. "Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. For whatever it's worth, I think my father needed someone to force his hand. He couldn't do the right thing alone. But you made it possible." She walked away, leaving David standing in the fading afternoon light. He pulled out his phone, opened a file he'd been working on. A foundation, the Meridian Memorial Foundation, established to support the families of the 63 victims. He'd donated his entire fee from the consultation work, plus the reward money offered by the victims' families for information leading to prosecution. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. His phone buzzed. "Lori, texting, dinner at home tonight? Cooking your favorite." David smiled, typed back, "I'll be there. Love you." He started walking home, past the courthouse where Malcolm Calhoun would spend the rest of his life, past the memorial park being built on the site where the Meridian Tower once stood, toward the small house where his wife waited and his future remained uncertain but possible. The cat had saved his life. The paint had kept him home. But he'd saved himself by refusing to let evil win, even when fighting it cost him pieces of his soul. In the end, justice wasn't clean or simple or satisfying. It was messy and complicated and incomplete. 63 people were still dead. Malcolm would eventually die in prison, but that wouldn't bring them back. David would carry the guilt of his own methods, the threats, the manipulation, the ruthlessness, for the rest of his life. But Malcolm Calhoun would never hurt anyone again. Jim West would pay for his crimes. and the families of the victims would know that the men responsible faced consequences. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't closure. But it was enough. David walked home through the Boston streets, feeling the weight of everything he'd done and everything he'd lost, and found that he could still breathe, still move forward, still hope that tomorrow might be better than today. The paint had saved his life that morning. What he did with that second chance would define him forever. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.